Hello, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Meg Mason. I'm the Marketing Director here at HydroPoint, and welcome to our second in a new educational series focused on outsmarting the drought. We're aiming for this webinar to last about 20 to 30 minutes with a short question and answer section at the end. Should you need to jump off at any time, do not worry, as we're recording this entire webinar and we'll be posting it on our website afterwards. Should you have any trouble at all during the session, feel free to type in your issues or questions into the chat section of the right-hand panel, and we will respond to them. Should you have any questions for either Chris Bain or Matt, please enter that in the Q&A section on the right side of the panel. Again, our moderator is Chris Bain, CEO and co-founder of HydroPoint Data Systems. HydroPoint is a smart water management company started in 2002 in Petaluma, California. So now I will turn it over to Chris for him to do a quick overview and then introduce our guest speaker today.
Thanks for the introduction, Meg, and thanks to everybody online who are taking a few minutes from their busy day to join us. It's great to see so many people participating. The purpose of this series is straightforward. It's to provide a forum for frank discussion about water conservation strategies as we face the current drought. And just to be very clear, this is not going to be an advertising platform for any vendor, including HydroPoint, but instead is really just a candid review of what has worked and, equally important, what has failed, presenting people who have been working for water conservation long before the current crisis. I think one theme that almost everyone that's been involved in water and water conservation can agree on is that it's been an ignored topic. And I think, these images would even shake the most jaded person to realize that we're in a new era. And that era is really one where it's no longer possible to ignore water waste. And that's really what we're focused on in this series is water waste. We think that the governor's mandate of 35% reduction is an interesting one. We'd rather see a 50% goal or a 95% goal of reducing waste itself. People might be able to argue whether they can cut out their water use, but nobody should be able to argue that waste is acceptable in this era of water deficiency. So having got off my little soapbox there, let's introduce our next panelist and get our discussion going. Matt Davenport is a certified water manager, horticulturalist, arborist, EPA Water Sense partner, and the president of Monarch Environmental. Based in Orange County, California, Monarch Environmental is a leading-edge resource management company specializing in landscape liaison services for commercial properties and homeowner associations. Since Monarch was founded in 2008, Matt and his team are credited with helping their clients reduce consumption by more than 700 million gallons of water. Yeah, 700 million gallons of water. Did I get that right, Matt?
That's right.
That's a nice amount of water.
Yeah.
So you've been living and breathing water conservation for the last, since 2008, so the last 6 years. What has changed in this new mandate by the governor? I mean, what in your mind is the biggest single sort of effect of the governor's mandate?
Right. Well, first off, Chris, thanks for allowing me to spend a few minutes with you and the folks listening. I've been in the industry actually about 15 years, starting off more on the contracting side, and so I've kind of seen it on both sides as a landscape contractor and then ultimately as a third-party consultant. But it's interesting. You go in these waves of where people are feeling like they should be more efficient in different areas, and then mandates are lifted or executive orders are recommended. This time it's a lot different. I mean, with what Governor Brown has done, issuing an executive order to achieve that 25% water reduction there's no suggestion anymore. And so what I'm witnessing with our clients and just from with talking with industry experts and green industry folks is there's in some ways there's a panic and where homeowner associations and some of these commercial clients that we really focus on are trying to figure it out. What does this all mean to us? I attended an educational seminar yesterday taught by put on by a local water district. And they expected, 30 or 40 people, and there was almost 500 people that showed up.
Wow.
And so this is a real, something's really changed in how people are reacting. And, it's one of the, in my opinion, where the difference, and getting to your question on how people are reacting, the difference is from suggestion to mandate, it's become a requirement, and there's heavy fines associated. And then on top of that, people in general seem to be concerned with doing the right thing, which is, a nice balance to what's going on, but it's getting stuck sometimes. And well, how are we going to save 25%? We're already efficient. What do we do now?
Right, I could see that. And on the commercial side, are you seeing customers or corporations also worried about their brands and as far as their reputation in regards to, there's more than just the economic penalty of the fines. There's also the community backlash and the public anger over a corporation, being wasteful with their resources?
Yes, I do. I wouldn't deny that the dollars are a big part of the commercial side, or the homeowners or residential side. There's no question that is kind of the stick that really drives everything. But to your point, absolutely. I mean, if anybody listening or you, Chris, you see even just your neighbor water coming off this sidewalk, it to me, and I live in a water world. I mean, I'm thinking about it all the time. It's really irritating and frustrating. So when you see it commercially or corporately, it feels a little bit like they don't care, and I think there's the term brand management and protecting your brand. So if you're walking into a whether it's a store or any sort of professional environment, and one thing's being said, and then you walk out the front door and water's being wasted, it just doesn't match up. So yeah, I think the combination of the dollars, like I said, is a huge piece that's associated with that. But it does. It's one of those things that in terms of associating how conscious you are of what's happening outside is starting to line up with what's happening inside.
That's huge, because for us, we found the biggest issue is just getting people to focus on the issue has been pretty much the biggest challenge when it comes down to it.
Right.
So from your experience, what has been the most effective, and what historically had the biggest impact in conserving water for you? I mean, your customers historically have looked to you to help them understand how they can save water and address rising water costs. What do you usually pretend I'm an HOA and I say, Matt, our water costs are number one, number two, number expense, and how do we get a handle on it? What are we doing wrong right now, and is there any hope for us to be able to save water?
Right. I would say no. There's no hope. No, that's not what I would say. What I would say is the first thing you did right was ask the question. I mean, that shows a level of honesty and kind of curiosity that really, will drive improvement. You have to start by asking that question: what else can we do, or can we do anything? And 100% of the time, you can do something. That's what I would tell if you were that group asking me that. There's several different factors to that. It's kind of a multi-layered answer, but water management as a whole has been an add-on service to landscape contractors. And so it went from kind of a marketing function, like, oh, and by the way, we're good at water management, to a expectation from the client to say, and we expect you to have the shrubs trimmed, the grass green, but we don't want to waste any water. And so what's happening is culturally in these commercial landscape management companies, and typically the larger ones, is they're having to kind of come from the ground up, all the way from the labor through the executive level, to start driving water management as a cultural practice, not just as a sales tool. Because with the cost of water going up, I mean, I'm located in Southern California, and truthfully, the cost of water is pretty cheap. I went from an SUV to a small little roller skate type car, not because I necessarily wanted to do the right thing. That was part of it, but it was because gas was $4.50 a gallon. So it drove me into some sort of behavior change, and that's where it started with the cost of water. Is starting to rise, and so you were starting to see some of that change. But what I would tell the client is you have to start with a plan. Very, very rarely do I interact with a homeowners association that has a landscape management plan, and that would be everything from water to horticulture, tree trimming practices, and all these things. But water is one of those few knobs you can turn in an HOA that you can turn it up or turn it down, and more often than not, it needs to be turned down. So in starting with that plan, my biggest recommendation, I would recommend it to those listening, is to really consider seeing water management as a requirement, not as a nice add-on service. It should be written into your contract, your landscape maintenance agreement, to say that, whether if you're in a tiered rate water district, that they will pay penalties. If there's different incentives that way, and you may want to consider incentivizing the contractor. Hey, if we can do this, then we'll offer you that. I think that's got to be a fair play on both sides. And then also, a lot of times these systems and these older homeowner associations are almost in disrepair. So how do you hold a landscape contractor accountable for a system that's not functional? Well, the way that you do that is you ask them to provide you with proposals to get it functional. And once it's functional, come to an agreement to say, hey, okay, we all good? Yeah, we're good. All right, listen, any overages from here out, here's our water budget. You're going to pay for it. And when that happens, it's pretty amazing. Water bills tend to drop pretty quickly. So having a plan, establishing some accountability from your landscape maintenance agreement is a big piece. And then the second part of that is, it really comes down to community managers and board members. So then I'm speaking specifically to homeowners associations, but what's important to the community manager, what's important to the board members is what's going to be important to the contractor. So whereas before maybe screaming green grass was really important, and oftentimes that included flood irrigating. Well, let's shift that to 2015 to say we want as high efficiency irrigation system as we can possibly have while maintaining a nice landscape to protect our property values and different things. So again, starting with a plan, coming to an accountability agreement, being the voice of saying what's important, and then the last piece of that I would mention would be water management. It's important to look at each water meter individually. And I'll share, Chris, I got time for a brief analogy?
Sure.
All right. So I have 4 kids, for all those of you listening, and I'll just share a quick story. If I had given my 4 kids $20 to go spend on whatever snacks at Chuck E. Cheese, and they come back with $2, they say, hey, here's $2 back. I say, wow, my 4 kids are as smart as I imagined. They actually came in under budget, right? Well, I break that conversation down with them a little bit later when we get home, and I find out my oldest has spent 16 of it. And I said, well, what'd the other 3 do? Well, my youngest, he's too young, so he didn't eat anything. The second one used $1, and the other one used $1, or however the math works. Well, I need to talk to my oldest, right, because that one went way over budget. It's the same way in water management. Typically, homeowners association or commercial clients too is they see water management from a global perspective, and so they say, we don't want to use more than $10,000 worth of water, and we're coming under budget, when in fact there's often 2 or 3 major eaters or offenders within that property, and if you can prioritize those, you can make a huge impact without really satisfying any aesthetics.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the interesting piece here is looking at the data and making sure you're breaking down the problem site by site, or meter as meter, as you say, and understanding what the data is really telling you. Because when you roll it all up, you obscure a lot of the information. And I like your point, too, about taking a leadership role. I mean, landscape maintenance companies are service businesses, so their job is to service what the customer is asking for. And if you're not asking for water conservation, there's little motivation for them to provide water conservation. It does seem like they're between a rock and a hard place where they're being asked to do something that's fundamentally different and has extraordinarily new layers of labor associated with it, but do it for the same price that they were doing just the landscape maintenance piece.
Yep.
So I think everybody has to be a little realistic. If you're asking more, you have to pay more. The good news is that money that they pay more for water management should pay for itself in the savings and the expense takeout.
Exactly.
So it makes it definitely, I think it, besides the mandate of the governor, it just makes plain economic sense. I know it does for our customers to save water, eliminate waste. What are the biggest obstacles you see as far as being successful? So you sat down with your customer, you've got a plan, you're looking at water meter by water meter, you're not letting the roll-up data obscure where the waste is. You've got a landscape maintenance contractor whose contract says, look, you're demotivated and punished on our ability to save or waste water. what's the next sort of hurdle? Because that sounds pretty straightforward. What causes failures to occur from that point on?
People. I mean, at the end of the day, when you get people involved in anything, things get difficult, right? So there's nothing more emotional in a landscape than trees and turf. And in addition to adding different technologies and doing different things that really do assist in this process and going through that program, oftentimes, sometimes the look and the feel, or even the amount of turf. Turf removal is a big movement. I call it, it's turf wars is really what it is. But so oftentimes the look of their landscape changes. And like I said, I'm located in Orange County, and we're the whole community kind of grew up at the same time. So there's a lot of communities with kind of a 90s landscape, which is very water thirsty, and ivies and grasses and all these different things. And so the biggest obstacles is just, the way I see it, is just the fact that there needs to be a realization from the client that things are going to be different moving forward. And if you can see that, and the task for if you're in my role as the consultant or as the contractor, is to lay that return on investment out for them very clearly to help you overcome those obstacles. And I always encourage the people I work with or work for is to start small. Do something in a smaller effort. If it does come to removing turf, start small. Over communicate with your the people that live there, the people that work there. That sort of thing, that you've got to build some trust along the way. So it's really important to communicate results. So if you're gonna ask for something and say, hey, here's our plan, you're accountable, and all these different things, then you need to communicate those results back to the decision makers so that you can move forward, because there's always more you can do. So I say that, sort of in jest about people, but that's the truth. I mean, you're really having to re-educate, in some ways, generations of people about this, finite resource that we're trying to maximize.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, after you do the analysis, you come up with your plan. As you execute your plan, you want to create a feedback loop to all the constituents so that they can understand where they're at, where they're going, and how well it's been accomplished. Exactly. Without that, everybody's sort of adrift. So does technology play a role in making that happen? I mean, I think in some levels, no matter what, you still comes down to people as far as solving it. When a broken valve is a broken valve, you need somebody to walk out to that valve and fix it. Mm-hmm. How does technology play as far as reducing costs, or obviously isn't a magic wand, but where does it fit in and where does it not in your mind?
15 years ago when I was entering the industry, I mean, technology was having a fax machine in your office. That was pretty cool.
Right.
You're pretty sophisticated at that point. But technology it's moved so fast that it plays an incredible role, and I'm a big believer in it, and applying, whether it's the weather track, your controllers, or smart timers, or different, high efficiency nozzles or software programs that help you analyze things. I mean, that to me, I mean, it's two different pieces. But on the smart timer side, the biggest advantage, and this is a huge advantage of the contractors, is the adjusting, the constant adjusting. In some of these large communities that have 50, 60, 100 controllers, nobody's going to effectively be able to manage that system by sending a crew of guys adjusting those controllers, once, twice, 5, 7 times a week, whatever it is. Otherwise, the client would be paying a ton for it. So that's been amazing, that part of it, being able to analytically, kind of review how things are going, if you do have flow sensors and these kind of things, in good working function. I will say that the technology has moved faster than the contractors up until recently. I think in the last couple of years, especially the good contractors have really made leaps and bounds in terms of understanding the roles that it plays. Even 5 years ago, there was still such a steep learning curve when you're used to setting it at 10 minutes, 5 days a week, or whatever it was, and it works. It just comes on, and hey, that's pretty simple. To feel like you're letting go of some control was scary for a long time for some of the landscape contractors. But for the most part, what I see is they've made that jump and have adapted to it. But technology is, it's kind of like the software, controls the hardware, right? In a lot of ways, the hardware is the manpower out in the field. Nothing will ever replace a shovel in the ground with a guy with a soil probe and doing these kind of things. But the technology side is allowing those guys to know where to put the shovel in the ground or put the probe in the ground. So it's the good news is you're still going to need people out there. And the other good news is that we've got all these great tools to help us manage, like you said, the number 1 or 2 items on the budget, and so yeah, it's been amazing.
Yeah, I think we've sort of gone through 3 generations of smart controllers and outdoor smart water management systems, and the first generation lacked user interfaces and components that made it worthwhile as far as really saving time, and it was a big change for the industry. In addition, people were thinking it was going to be magical, like a lot of new technology, and
right.
It could magically fix a bad system and correct legacy issues. And now that we're in this 3rd generation, it's all about getting the right data to the right person at the right time and having a shared scoreboard, for lack of a better word, where all these people can look and see what the results are and are sharing information so they can see they're succeeding or failing. And to your earlier point, not just on a high level, but on a meter-by-meter level, so they can really understand what needs to be fixed. So I think we're about close to wrapping up. I guess that's sort of a parting question. What, in your mind, has been the biggest misconception or fallacy people have regarding water conservation? If you could, just wave a magic wand and tell people what's up.
Yeah.
What would you love people to change their thinking on?
Several things, but I think for me, it's one would be that water conservation should be permanent. This shouldn't be something that we get through this and then we can relax back into where we were. I mean, an expanding, I say this is something I remind myself all the time, but every drop of water that's on the planet today was here when it started.
Right.
And obviously, the population's grown quite a bit since then. So we have to do more with less. There's a large, the ground sat still for about 10 years with new construction, and so new construction's picked up. So new homes, new meters, and there's still no more water, right? So we're doing more with less. And so I think the idea of making water conservation a permanent behavior change that we really pride ourselves. I mean, in California especially, we're so innovative on so many different levels as a state that this is something that I would love to see become a permanent, I don't mean a permanent mandate, but a permanent cultural change for all of us to say that this is just what we do. So I think that misperception is still pervasive out there, that this is a temporary thing. I mean, I think in the late 80s, there was a 4-year drought, and there was something called the March Miracle, where we got a bunch of rain and took us out of a drought. Well, that to me should be irrelevant. I sure hope we get an April or May miracle or whatever it is, but I still don't think that should change our practices towards being more efficient and really making a permanent course correction.
Yeah, hopefully that'll be the one thing that's good that comes out of the crisis that we're in right now is a change in people's thinking and people not accepting waste anymore as far as a standard operating practice.
Yeah.
Well, it's been great talking with you, Matt. We've got a couple questions that we'd like to throw at you here.
Okay.
Let's see. I like this one. What could happen to those who ignore the mandatory reductions?
What could happen?
What could or should?
Could or should. Two different questions in there. Could, and this is for the state of California, is that there's a $10,000 a day fine.
That gets your attention.
Yeah, that could happen. What should happen? I don't know. You'd have to drink the water off the curb. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
I think what should happen is that we're moving from incentivized, with recommendations to incentivize, which is like rebate programs, to here's now you have to do it. So it's a little bit like speeding on the freeway. It's not you can't do it, but they can't pull everybody over. So they're going to pick out some people and make examples of them. So I don't want anybody I'm associated with being part of that.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it. They're definitely going to be making examples, and the last thing I think anybody wants to be is the poster child for water wasting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we've been talking about businesses, but they're asking what can the average homeowner do to save water. Where would you point the average homeowner first, as far as, obviously you hear people don't turn your water on while you're brushing your teeth, which I always find interesting. That's one of the options when there's so many better savings opportunities out there. What do you think people should be focusing on? I assume outdoor irrigation is the big opportunity.
I think the number in the average household is like 60% of the water for a home is used outdoors. I think that's a big focus that needs to happen. And actually, if you focus on that, it's amazing. Your showers do get shorter, and you do shut off the faucet while you're brushing your teeth. But that's the real opportunity. And it's not all that different from commercial. It may be a system upgrade. You could start by just on a Saturday, just do a manual program in your controller and just walk around and see what's happening. Chances are you have, broken nozzles. You may have a broken lateral line. It's as simple as kind of getting the system up to speed in terms of repairs. And then, you don't have to be an expert to do that. You can just look at it visually, get them repaired, and then, start thinking about changes in whether it's reducing some of your turf or changing out your plant types. There's usually opportunities for that. That's what I've done in my own home. Convert to drip.
Yeah, I think your advice is spot on. The simple process of walking your property, which is a good idea regardless. That's what's nice about having property, is enjoying it while you've got it, turning your irrigation system on and doing that on a regular basis, because, it's amazing when they run at night what you don't see happening.
Right.
Our dog took out 2 sprinkler heads just the other week, and I was checking our water system, and there's this big geyser, and if I hadn't checked, it's just been going on for a while.
Right. And the last piece I'll say to that question is, most people turn their controller up in March and down in October. That obviously weather patterns and water requirements changed. So if you can adjust that or install a new controller or a device to help you do that, or ask your gardener to do it, it's just make a few adjustments a year, and that'll make a tremendous difference.
Yeah, good advice. Well, Matt, I think we've just about ended up our session. Thanks so much for joining us today, and I like your approach to the problem. I think it's great advice on a lot of different perspectives, and hopefully your vision of getting everybody into a new world order will be what happens with pain or suffering.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate you having me.
Have a great week.
You
Talk
too.
to you soon. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. This concludes our webinar for HydroPoint's Outsmarting the Drought. We're going to be having a webinar next week with Clint Collins, Senior Director of Landscape Operations at the Irvine Company Office Properties. Irvine Company, of course, is one of the premier real estate companies in the country, and their best practices are followed by folks all over the world, actually. So it'll be really interesting to see how they're battling the drought and what they've been doing for a long, long time before even this crisis came up, and how they're responding to the crisis in particular. The following week, we'll be having Rachel Baker, Environmental Stewardship Manager for Northern California Kaiser Permanente. And then following that, we'll have Eric Santos, VP of Irrigation Services for Brickman Valley Crest Companies, now called Brightview. And following that, we'll have Kevin Tonian, Administrative Services Manager for City of Santa Clarita, who's implemented a host of environmental and water reduction programs and been very successful. So again, we look forward to seeing everybody or hearing everybody next week, Thursday, same time, same place, same channel. And we look forward to any questions or suggestions for improvement or topics that you'd like to hear in the future. Have a great Thursday and a great weekend, and thanks again for joining. Take care. Bye-bye.